Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Angie Brown. Angie, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin.
I would love for you to just take a moment and just share a little bit about yourself with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
In French, maybe.
We'll do a take two of everything in French. I grew up in Indianapolis, and I went to Butler and studied French and international politics. And I was gonna be an ambassador in the UN and all that jazz. And after undergrad, I taught in France for a little while. I taught English and realized that, I might want to expand my skill set a little more. Teaching was not my thing.
Right.
The hardest job I've probably ever had. And I have a huge respect for teachers. So I decided to come back to the States and pursue my MBA, which is Master's of Business Administration.
And you did that where?
I did that at Portland State.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the Portland connection.
Hence the Portland connection. I moved to Portland for my MBA and have decided to stick around because I really, really like it here.
So walk us through, did you go and get your MBA with the idea that you were going to start something, or were you working for another company? You plan on just, stepping into the corporate world? What was the plan?
I don't think there was a super clear plan. I just felt very unprepared for life. And I felt like business school would give me a lot of diversity and skills. I really was interested in the idea of entrepreneurship. My father's an entrepreneur, and he's always been a big inspiration for me. So I wanted to go to get my MBA with like a focus in entrepreneurship and pursue that. But I was very open to like other ideas. Life never ends up the way I plan. So I stopped planning a lot of times.
It's almost like in some ways you just kind of take that step and just kind of react to whatever the environment opens up in front of you. So,
yeah.
So you graduated with your MBA, you just wake up the next morning and you just start this company called Bavard. Is that as clear as the path was?
Okay.
All right, there you go.
So it wasn't quite how that worked. COVID happened and we went into lockdown, and I flew back to Utah, or I drove to Utah to stay with family during the first shutdown and finish my MBA online. And during that time, my brother, David, had been working on this side project. He had been taking an online course at Stanford, I believe, all about automation and machine learning methodologies, and he was super stoked on AI. And he had been developing a chatbot platform in his spare time for fun. And I was finishing up business school, and I wasn't really sure what the next step would be, especially with COVID and kind of everything being a lot different than what I had expected. So we started putting our heads together and talking to my father, who's an entrepreneur. And we felt like we had a lot of potential, especially us as a team. And we kind of just like pulled the trigger. We're like, we're going to spend the next at least 2 years trying to make this into something successful.
And this was approximately a year ago that you were kind of that time frame that you're talking about?
Yeah. So I guess COVID happened in March. I drove home, and maybe like within a month or two, we were working on Bavard. So we're not, I don't think we're quite at a year, but we're getting close.
So you said he was working kind of doing AI, maybe chatbot, just kind of stuff. Was it designed for a specific purpose, or was he just kind of experimenting in that kind of that space?
David's a software engineer, and I think he had wanted to improve his machine learning engineering skills. So yeah, he was kind of working on creating like the back end side of of a chatbot.
Now, are these chatbots, are these embedded in websites? Are they, I mean, do you use them in social media? What's kind of the target market of Bavard? And I mean, you can actually talk about how Bavard was even born, you know, in that same vein.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer the first question first. We can deploy our widget or a chatbot widget that is customized to you on any web-based platform. So typically it's a website. Could be a web app as well. And then in terms of like how we had decided to kind of go this route, I think we had a lot of different like whiteboarding sessions in which we were trying to decide like, did we want to be like more internally focused for companies or externally focused and deal with the customer support side of things, and doing like a bunch of market research and kind of like putting my MBA skills to use finally. We felt like the biggest demand was in the customer support analytics side of things. And so that's where we decided to focus.
See, you're getting so good now. You're preempting my questions. I was about to ask you the question and you answered it before I had a chance to ask that. You know, I was thinking, is this like, you know, top of funnel, you know, the kind of entry into the sales pipeline? Is this customer service based? Can it, you know, serve virtually any of those environments? Is there a specific niche that you are trying to like capture with this chatbot?
I think at our MVP as it is now, works really well for customer support cases. As we grow and add features, the sales funnel side of things will be probably the next logical step. And like for example, becoming integrated with Shopify and a lot giving the chatbot the ability to mine the website and take in information about what the user's been looking at, and then make suggestions based off of that information.
So it's this creepy little voice that goes, "Hey, I see you've been looking at shoes. How about I put some shoes?" And it's like Alexa is listening, you know, in my apartment or something. So I mean, I really do. I think this is just a fascinating field. I mean, how incredibly intuitive this stuff is to me, and especially a person that doesn't understand it very well. But so why did you choose I'm curious, why did you choose kind of the customer support side versus the sales side? Was one easier to design for than the other, or is that just the pain point that you first recognized?
That was the pain point that we first recognized. I think with COVID happening simultaneously, we were noticing all of these local businesses that were trying to transition to a more like a digital platform and really struggling. But we all saw how many businesses struggled. And so that kind of triggered the potentiality for a chatbot to be able to solve some of those issues. Yeah.
So when you're talking to business owners and you're kind of introducing the idea to them, is there a pretty steep learning curve, or do people generally get it, you know, pretty early? I mean, or does it I'm sure it would depend on who you're talking to, but I mean, is there a certain age demographic that, you know, you're aiming at? Is there a certain industry? Is this a service industry? Is this a product, you know, based, you know, solution? I mean, what exactly, I mean, if you're trying to find kind of the low hanging fruit out there for this service, who are you aiming at primarily?
I think our target market right now would be like other medium-sized tech companies, probably with a similar SaaS product, mostly because they understand our industry, they understand the application, and they have a ton of customer support expense and time commitment that they're spending. And so usually those conversations happen really easily. And then in terms of like, we've you know, had some beta customers who were in a more e-commerce space and selling product. And I feel like the learning curve for them was just a little bit more steep. And you know, what like some widget on their website would help them sell product or would help them, handle customers asking about, a late order or whatever. And the way that we've kind of solved that is by doing custom demos for customer, especially at the beginning right now, and letting them see those use cases in action and how much they can like delight and intrigue a customer by giving instantaneous responses or connecting them very quickly to the correct support agent.
Right.
Whatever that scenario is.
Now, is the intent to replace kind of the lowest entry customer support level or function of a company, or is it to, like you said, to kind of augment that and really specifically target, a quicker solution maybe on the back end? Or I mean, is this, if it is a kind of a customer service, kind of customer solution, environment that you created? So I'm thinking call center, initial call center, you get all these inbound calls, 80% of the questions that frontline may be able to answer, only 20 have to be escalated or whatever. So is that kind of the idea behind this bot, or is it a lot more intuitive than that?
I think it's the latter. I wouldn't say that we would totally replace a specific person within a company, although there is the potential for that if that's what the customer wanted. I think having a widget and being able to more quickly qualify the problem that a user is having, and if they need to talk to a human, getting them to the correct person really quickly, it'll just create a lot more efficiency in the process. And 9 times out of 10, these call centers or a customer support agent is answering the same question over and over.
Right.
And it's their time.
Right.
Whereas they could be, following up with some other sales opportunity, whatever
Right.
that is.
Sure.
And we can allow the end customer to answer that, to have an answer to that question without waiting for an email response.
Right. And your bot never sleeps, your bot's never sick, your bot, there's no maternity leave, there's no family leave, there's no nothing. There's nothing. I mean, it is on 24/7. And have we advanced to the point that people they cannot differentiate between a bot and somebody physically, on the other side, physically chatting with them?
When I go back and we have access to the old conversations that have happened, with our widget on our website, and like a lot of times people are asking like, "Are you a human?" or something.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
And I think it's because our clients, the businesses, they can customize the widget however they want to have a certain tone, add emojis, add flair, or they can, and some of them choose to say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer.
Yeah.
Like I'm like here to help you today," and some choose to be like, "Hi, I'm a chatbot."
Right.
But yeah, it is kind of funny how that works. They're getting super realistic.
See, I'm a little mischievous when I feel like I'm talking to a bot. I'll ask it questions that I think it won't be able to answer. Like, is it raining there? Tell me what the weather outside right now where you're sitting, or something like that. So it is amazing to me, just the whole AI space. And I mean, it is ubiquitous. I mean, it's in so many different, IoT, the Internet of Things, just the whole idea of the unlimited potential, almost in some ways, almost scary potential of what it could become. I mean, I watch the sci-fi movies like everybody else about the AI taking over and, somehow learning to learn, the whole idea that it can learn to learn. So tell me, let's go back to like day one. You said that you whiteboarded the idea. Everybody agrees. Is it your sister-in-law that gave you the idea for the name of the company? You said it was the French word for chat. Right. And could you say that in your most beautiful French accent?
The verb is bavarder, and the what is it called when you adjust a verb? You know, I am, you are, whatever. uh, I
No, I
chat
know
is,
exactly. Yeah, it's parsing maybe, or it's
yeah, like
yes.
that.
So the verb form is bavard. It just means to chat.
Yes.
Okay, so like je bavard means I chat.
Yeah.
So that now the idea of chat, and so you get the name. You're sitting there. You've wiped off the whiteboard because everybody's agreed that this is the great way to go. What does day one look like when you launched your company?
For me, it was a lot of legal steps and me figuring out what it takes to incorporate, what it takes to set up a stock option plan. It was a
You had
ton
big
of paper.
dreams. If day one you're talking about a stock option plan already.
Well, you have to be prepared.
Absolutely. You sure you don't have a legal background instead of MBA? You didn't tell us you went to law school too, somewhere in there, right?
I did not.
Not yet.
That would have been helpful. And I think we were immediately trying to recruit a machine learning engineer because we knew that that was how we wanted to differentiate ourselves. There are
Right.
other companies, they're doing pretty well, but there are none, in our opinion, with super strong AI.
Mm-hmm. So you hired. So is this I mean, with the just your idea, did you kind of go through did you bootstrap this? Did you go through like we're gonna raise a little money on the front end, kind of like what they say, the 3 F's: friends, family, and I don't like the third F, fools. But did you raise that initial amount of money that said, okay, we need kind of a runway for 18 months, or we need our 24-month runway or whatever? Or did you just like, go in the other room and go, Dad, um, dad entrepreneur, maybe we need a little check here to kind of get us kickstarted?
Yeah. No, basically we bootstrapped. Our family, friends, and fools were very generous. And we kind of estimated a rough burn rate that we expected and how long we wanted to be able to go before we needed to connect with venture capital firms, which we're kind of starting to do now, and it's hell.
Wow.
But yeah, our family and friends helped us out a lot. We put in a bit of our own savings, and that has got us through until now, luckily.
I've heard it's easier to raise money if you have a little bit of your own money in the game. If people would say, well, if you're willing to put your own money here, then I'm a little more willing to kind of take this ride with you. Did you find that to be true?
Yeah, I think it comes off as so much more genuine. I mean, maybe you're not in the place to be able to do that, and that's totally understandable. But if you are, and you're asking other people to take
Right.
that risk, I would hope that you would be willing to take that risk and yeah, show a little bit of trust and confidence in yourself, and then they'll see that too.
So you said that you haven't even been operating for 12 months yet, and you've gone from, we just found a name, we wiped off the whiteboard, we launched, and you're already talking about venture capital. I mean, that's a pretty substantial shift in the last, say, 10 months. I mean, what's been the growth rate? I mean, you must have had tremendous response to be having those conversations already, or you are just one optimistic entrepreneur.
Maybe it's a bit of both.
Yeah, or maybe you're both. That's right.
And I don't mean to miscommunicate and say that we have venture capital, ready to go. We are backed. We're just kind of beginning the process and getting our foot in the door, mostly just to figure out like what is that world like?
Right.
What is it take? We've had a few interviews, gotten some feedback, really helpful feedback about how we can be more attractive to VC funds. And we're trying to use that and apply now before we really need that support. Right. I would say I'm new to tech. I'm new to SaaS. So I don't know what a typical first year is like and how much response we, should be getting. But we've gotten initially we had a bunch of beta users, and we're working with, initial clients now. And our product was kind of just recently like ready, ugly,
Sure. Yeah.
for use.
Actual MVP in use.
Yeah, exactly. So considering that, I feel pretty confident about where we are, and we're working with a sales development firm. We decided to third party that out, and they've been really instrumental in helping us ramp up.
And do most of those firms that you kind of contract with to kind of build your sales pipeline or whatever, do they work on like a percentage of revenue basis, or is it we got to throw in money up front and just hope that they're successful, or is it some combination of those two?
This one is money up front. It's a set fee for a certain amount of time with a sales development representative, and I think it goes based on a month, or you can do like 3 months or 6 months or whatever. I'm not sure if they have different plans for different size companies, but I'm sure when they're working with like a tiny startup, they're probably a little too risk averse to be take it.
Yeah. But I mean, startups, it's like a catch-22 situation. I mean, the startups are like, well, we don't have the cash to pay you. Well, we don't want to take the risk on you because you're a startup. So it's almost like venture capital. I mean, it seems like to me that oftentimes venture capital firms want to wait until you have, a substantial growth curve going, and then it's almost like they're throwing fuel on the fire, so to speak. It's like, they're earlier stage, or they're angel investors, or they're, early stage, founders that just like to take a chance and hope that this is a mini unicorn, that might just take off in one day. So it's interesting. What's one of the main things you think you've learned by talking to these VC firms that you just did not know beforehand?
Did not know. Probably that within like the first year is too early. They're gonna be like, nah.
Does it depend on the firm you're talking to? I mean, like a lot of the VC firms that I've at least, I've talked to a lot of founders, and the ones that talk to VC firms said, we don't even look at a company until it's hitting 10 million. We literally don't even look at a company. We don't look at a company until it's 50 million. We don't look at it. I'm thinking, my gosh, how many companies would you never look at that are, that I would view as pretty successful? You have such a high bar to entry, and these are not the major, firms that, have funded Apple and Tesla and things like that. I mean, it's interesting to kind of hear that them in that world, that there's, it is a high bar to enter, to get in these firms. And maybe you have to start it with smaller firms, more startup venture, funds or something like that. But has it been a little bit like Shark Tank? You made your pitch to them, and they're like just ripping it apart, and you kind of skulk back out of the building. You feel like, I just got beaten up.
There was one that was definitely like that. This guy just tore us to shreds, and I just disagreed with him so deeply, and I like wanted to lash out and get very defensive, but doesn't help. There was 2 others that were very supportive, and they were like, maybe come back in a couple months when you've done XYZ or whatever.
Yeah.
Send this information, and we'll consider you for our next fund, or da da da. So I think you're right. Like there's funds that are clearly focused on different things. Some are super early stage seed, some a little bit later stage, and so you definitely need to filter a bit and decide which might have the most potential for you.
Are you looking for a firm that is going to be real hands-on, or are you saying, actually we've kind of figured out the business side of things. We really just need kind of the gasoline to pour on the fire here. We need capital just to be able to scale. We need capital to be able to hire the right people to be able to, to grow and the things that we know need to be done? Or are you really looking for somebody that is a kind of a SaaS, or like a SaaS venture capital firm that's done this before in a similar space, knows things we don't, could really add expertise, serve on an advisory board, that type of thing?
Personally, I would welcome input and feedback and support in whatever form that comes. I think there's a lot more that can be given to us than money.
Yeah.
And me and my co-founder, we've never done this before, and we're learning, and we're super passionate, and that helps. But there is a certain amount of ignorance that we're having to overcome, and we have tried to be good about reaching out to people who have no interest in investing, but have some time on their hands that they can advise. And that's amazing. It's like such a blessing. So in terms of like a venture capital firm investing in us, I think there's a difference between, being involved and offering advice to trying to take a little bit too much ownership over decision making, not trusting that we know our business. We are experts in this now. We be an expert in, business as a whole, but we're an expert at chatbots, and they're trusting us to a certain extent.
I mean, that is a delicate dance. I mean, between having somebody that you can offer you expertise and offer you real guidance and things like that versus, feeling like actually my money's on the line here, so I'm going to drive this thing. I'm going to drive it through you, type thing. And that's and could be a very unhealthy relationship, for a venture capital firm to come in and really, because you would almost feel like you're always fighting like against the DNA that we wanted to instill in the company, that they're not tracking with our vision or whatever. So it's really interesting to kind of hear. And I didn't mean to take all this time to drill down on your VC, experience, but to me, that's very interesting that, especially an early stage founder, like you've gone through this, you've had some, some knocks, you've learned some lessons. And I mean, I would imagine every time you pitch, it's getting better and better too.
It is. I am like proud of myself because that's not necessarily a skill for me. It's not innate, but it's gotten better. And
I'm sure you're getting like maybe more focused feedback too. I mean, it's it's not this general like, guys, you're kind of wasting our time here, versus, hey, if in 3 months, if you've met these, key metrics or whatever, we're ready to roll. So that would be very encouraging though, for a VC firm to say, check back in 2 months, check back in 3 months. I mean, I thought they're going to say check back in 5 years when you've, 10X'd where you are today or something like that. So we're not going to need you then, we need you now. The whole idea. But go back to your first business plan. I mean, I don't know if it's on an Excel spreadsheet or written on a Post-it note or however you did it initially. How have you tracked, in comparison to what you thought you were going to do in the first 10 months?
I need to go back. I know I have a document that listed out our goals for year one. I don't think we expected to have any paying customers year one. And we were hoping that by year two, we'd have 30. I feel like that was our goal, just based on the pricing and the market and whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we've matched up pretty accurately to what we expected. I think the thing that held us back the most was recruiting. And like it's a bottleneck. Yeah. We wanted to be out a lot earlier than 10, 11 months,
right?
But we couldn't, just based on employees and people and developers, and things take time. But thankfully now we finally have like a really solid team, and I'm really happy about it. But it took a long time to find people who were willing to take the risk of, coming on to a startup, their secure job at Google or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's risky, and I respect them for coming. Yeah.
So I mean, I've heard that it's like, hire slow, fire fast. Have you had to experience that even in your first, 10 or 11 months? Like, we hired this rock star on paper, and he gets there, she gets here, and there's like, oh my gosh, what did we do?
Yeah, as kind, I've been working on more of like the business administrative side of things, and
Hmm.
then David, Mike, the co-founder, he's been our tech guy, and he is way less patient and understanding of like there's an onboarding process and people take time to ramp
Yeah.
up. And if they are what you want them to be within week one, that's not necessarily at the end of the world. But yeah, we definitely had like maybe 5 or 6 months ago, we were working with some developers, and it would be like I'd get a Slack message from David and be like, Angie, like this is over, like you need to let him go
Fix
and
this.
find some. And it's always like a give and take with me and him. I'm like, let's talk to him first. Let's discuss expectations and see if he can make those changes or if she can make those
Yeah.
changes. And everyone will be happy. It's a learning curve. I've never managed before. It's hard.
Hey, everything's a learning curve. I mean, there's a first time for everything. I mean, you got to start somewhere in every discipline. And so I'm curious, have you found it more difficult, or has it worked really well for you and like your co-founder to be in two different places?
I
I'm
think it's
assuming he's not in Portland, right?
no, he's in Utah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
That's what I thought.
I visit every 2 to 3 months,
Hmm.
and we always get a lot out of those times together. I feel like it gives us a chance to get back on the same page, to make plans, to like reconnect. But honestly, things remote, our entire team is remote. It's
Yeah,
been
that's what I was going to say. You probably don't have your team sitting in an office somewhere. So yeah, the fact that I mean, it is a new world. I mean, post COVID I mean, and the IT world was in a completely different space. It probably adjusted the best to, to the COVID pandemic, versus any other industry. But um, I'm assuming you don't ever see a point that you would need to be centralized.
I don't think so, unless we got really big
Hmm.
and our employees were asking for something like
Yeah.
that. They were like sick of working at home. They liked the social aspect of an office space. That would be a totally different story. But as long as we are staying connected and doing our little scrums over Slack
Hmm.
and it's worked really well. Like just yesterday, we had a design meeting where just like for an hour or two, it was like the whole team, and we were just spitballing ideas. And afterwards, I got a Slack message from a few of them saying that was super fun. I felt really good about that. And yeah, right now it's working, and I want to continue it like that.
Now, the majority of people on your team, are they in the States, or are they all over the world?
They're in the States.
That makes it a little easier time wise. I mean, you don't have to be kind of asynchronous across the planet. People in, Far East that are going, hey, they're asleep when you're awake, and vice versa when you're trying to match schedules and chat over Slack or whatever.
Yeah, I actually just realized that I lied. My co-founder is currently in France. His wife is French, and she's having her baby. And she wanted to be home in France for that. So
Yeah.
they're in France for the next 3 months. So we're actually adjusting to all those things we talked about. And yeah, it kind of freaks me out because it's
Hmm.
be very straightforward, but we'll figure it out.
And you're on the West Coast too, so you can add 2 or 3 hours to that difference as well. So his day is ending when your day is beginning.
Yeah.
So let's go back to like the 12 months ago. What's one thing that, or maybe two things that you think, man, I wish I would have known this 12 months ago. This would have made my life so much easier as a co-founder of a SaaS startup.
12 months ago, um, we first decided to form an LLC. That was going to be our legal state, whatever. And then when we were talking to our advisors and discussing our ultimate goals and how we wanted to be able to share ownership of the company with our employees, we were like, oh crap, that was the wrong thing.
Yep.
And you would think it'd be no big deal. You just dissolve the LLC and you start over. But it was such a hassle. We couldn't get a new employee identification number for months.
Wow.
And the IRS was like overflowed with like COVID requests and like people, you know, they were busy.
Right.
And so it was like really difficult to legally do business.
That's incredible. I mean, so did you form an S corp? What did you end up forming?
A C corp.
Okay. So like when I started my LLC, I got my tax identification number like in 24 hours or 48 hours. I'm thinking this is really simple, you know?
We did for the LLC. It was perfect, but then you can't use it again. Like you can't use it.
Right. So you had to dissolve one to start the other because it was the same name, or could you have started the C corp and then close the LLC later if it was a different business name or a business entity?
Maybe I didn't know any better, and I probably did it all wrong.
Hey, I'm not asking you the question like I know. I just, yeah, I don't know the right answer.
I don't either, and I didn't at the time, and I probably could have consulted a lawyer.
LegalZoom can only take you so far. That's right. Or watching a YouTube video on how to set up a corporation can only take you so far. Yeah, those are lessons we've all learned. Absolutely, have all learned. So, man, this has been great. I love to hear the story and how, you know, early stage you guys are and what you've seen, you know, happen in a very short period of time. What's one thing that if you want to kind of close us out with, one thing we haven't touched on that you would really like to share with our audience?
I don't know why this is in my head, but it's surprisingly fun to work with your brother.
He would be thrilled to hear that.
Yeah.
Because 9 out of 10, they would go, don't ever start a business with family. It could really be difficult. I mean, obviously you guys had to have a pretty good relationship before you started the business, because I mean, this is tough. I mean, starting a business it's going to keep you up later. It's going to take you longer. It's going to cost you more money. It's going to give you more heartache and headache than you anticipated. But, you know, at the end, the nice thing about it is I was listening to another podcast this morning about, you know, what's the definition of an entrepreneur is you work 80 hours for yourself, so you don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. But I wouldn't trade it for anything because I like the freedom of working for myself. And you experienced that.
The freedom's really nice. I get people telling me all the time that they're so envious of how I work and how just the flexibility that I have to kind of make my own schedule. I work when I want. I mean, obviously I have to work a lot. But I can also adjust it. The flexibility is nice. The responsibility is soul crushing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's personality. I care deeply for my employees. I want to make sure they're secure. And so every day I'm like, oh my God, we have to be successful. We need to keep their jobs. So I'd say that's like the downside.
So where do you think you're going to be in, say, 3 years? What's the projection for Bavard?
Oh, I think like somewhere on a Slack channel, we wrote, we're going to be the #1 best-selling chatbot platform with the best NLP, the best AI. That's the goal.
You don't have like numbers of clients. You don't have like revenue numbers.
I don't think I'm prepared to share that information. I think it was.
You're afraid I'm going to record it, and then 3 years from now we're going to go, remember when you said you were going to do this? And hey, I think you're going to surprise us. I think you probably underestimated what you can accomplish in the next 3 years. And I mean, it sounds like that you all have such a great start, such a great foundation that you've laid. You've got a good team in place, and the fact that I mean, we're headed in this direction. We're not moving away from it. So, I mean, what a time to be in this space, you know, and to just to see just the quantum changes that are happening in this space, even like every month on month, you know, not, we're not talking about years anymore. That it has moved up, that the timetable has moved up, and it's just rapidly changing. But I'm anxious to see your journey and to see what you guys pull off, and one day maybe ringing that bell on the New York Stock Exchange, and we will certainly see what the IPO looks like in about 5 years. And those venture capitalists that threw you out early, they're going to go, what were we thinking? We should have jumped on this rocket ship.
That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. It'd be amazing. Well, Angie, really appreciate you taking the time today and just sharing the story of Bavard with our listeners, and just sharing your personal story, and just hearing, you know, the things that and just, you know, how real and raw you've been with, you know, the failures and the successes and everything in between, and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Angie, thanks again.
Thanks.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.